Thank you very much for joining. We're just waiting for a few people to join so far. Numbers are going up from 26, 27, 28, 30, 33 people we have at present, which is a very good number. I'll just let this go on a little longer. But while we're waiting to see if anyone else would like to join, this is if you'd like to introduce yourself by putting your name and where you're from in the chat, that'll be a very helpful thing. And also just to let you know, we are recording the meeting as well. Okay, it looks as though the numbers have stabilized, so I'll kick things off. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doug, for being first in there. The things under the team. That's very, very helpful. Well, I'd like to welcome you all to this training session for the National Churches Trust, discovering the impact of your church with the House of Good Local. As I said, please introduce yourself in the chat, and we are recording. We will be sending around a link to the presentation, so you'll be able to watch that back. That should be going out before Easter. So that should be a very helpful thing. So you can sit back and enjoy the talk, safe in the knowledge that you'll be able to watch it back again. My name is Dr. Karl Newton. I'm the Deputy CEO of the National Churches Trust, and I'm joined today by Mr. Oliver Lack, who's our Comms and Public Affairs Officer. He's going to take you through our new tool, the House of Good Local. Whilst Oliver is doing his talk, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions. So if you put those in the chat, I can keep an eye on them, and then I can raise those with Oliver when he reaches the end of his presentation. So please use the chat to introduce yourself as we start off, and then as Ollie starts his presentation, please put any questions in the chat box too, and I can take it through there. Okay. I'd like to hand over now to my colleague, Mr. Oliver Lack. Ollie, action.
Great, thanks very much for that, Karl. So I'm just going to start off today, and thanks everyone for joining as well. I'm just going to start off by introducing the National Churches Trust and what we do, for any of you who might not have heard of us before. So we're a charity that's been going in various forms since the 19th century. We're here to keep churches open and in use for generations to come. We want to see these amazing buildings thriving at the heart of the communities they serve. And we do that in a number of ways. We've got a team of about 20 here. It might seem like quite a lot, but we're trying to help 38,500 churches across the UK. So there's a lot of work to do, and we do what we can. You might know us primarily as a grant funder. We do distribute more than £2 million in grants every year to about 250 churches. Of course, we'd like to fund more than that, and you know it is a very competitive landscape. But we do what we can, and we also do more than just giving grants. So this is our current strategy that has been in place since 2023, and it's broken into 3 strands really. So build up is about making sure that churches are well maintained, adaptable, and in good repair. So this means, you know, grant funding, but it also means helping you churches to find other funders to carry out projects in a kind of efficient and effective way, and to you know, follow best practice at all times so that projects can take place in a really positive manner and make a big difference. We also want to help churches to open up. So this is about making sure that churches are sustainable, open, and welcoming. We do, among our other training sessions, training about tourism, how you can help welcoming visitors into your church, and how you can kind of promote the things that you're doing a bit more widely as well. And finally, the strand that's kind of most pertinent to our talk today is speak up. So we want to speak up for churches, make sure that the government and other policymakers and decision makers at various levels across the country know the value that your buildings have, both locally and nationally. Why is that important? Well, In England, there are almost 1,000 places now on Historic England's Heritage at Risk Register, being added at more than 50 a year in recent years. In Wales, we know that 25% of historic churches and chapels have closed in the last decade, and the Church of Scotland is also actively planning to close as many as 40% of its churches. So there's a bit of a crisis going on in this space, but we're here hopefully to provide a bit of hope in the midst of that. And one of the things that we've looked at to do that is called the House of Good. You may very well have heard of this before. It started off really in 2020. So this is a piece of research that's been foundational for us as a charity. We knew before this how much work churches were doing, how important they were to local communities, and how much they were valued by those who rely on them for support and as part of their way of life. But we'd never previously been able to quantify that. Fortunately, in 2020, we set up the House of Good, working with a firm of economists called State of Life, who helped us used survey data that we'd had from over 7,000 churches to look at all of the things that churches were doing. Based on what we were able to measure and what we were able to kind of put through this research process, we found initially that churches were providing £12.4 billion worth of social good every year. But just 1 year later, the sort of metrics we were using to calculate this were adjusted. The government introduced its or updated its Green Book methodology, and we recalculated that value at £55 billion. So that's a huge amount of social good that churches are providing day in, day out, right across the UK for people in need, for all sorts of people, whether that's through food banks, drug and alcohol addiction, support groups, mental health counselling. Churches support things like loneliness, hosting youth groups, after school clubs, all of those sorts of things were captured in this. And even with all of that considered, we still believe this to be a very conservative figure. The truth is that churches do a lot more than this, but that's what we've been able to capture to date. More recently, we looked at another sort of line of work called the House of Good Health. This built on what we'd done and looked at a slightly different avenue. So we explored all of the things that churches were doing to help with health outcomes across the UK. Again, it looks at things like food banks and drug and alcohol addiction support services and how those things can create value in local communities. We used those calculations to estimate that all of that support that goes on in churches across the UK saves the NHS £8.4 billion a year in cost relief services, and that's about 4% of total UK public health spending, equivalent to employing 230,000 nurses. So it's a huge difference that churches are making across all of these areas. And it's worth mentioning as well that that £8.4 billion isn't a part of that original 55 billion. It's a separate figure. So it's again, you know, we're being very, very conservative here with our estimates. So we looked at some case studies across the whole of the UK as well for some of these services. One example is St Martin in Roath Church in Cardiff, and this is looking at drug and alcohol addiction support service. In 2022, more than 10,000 deaths were caused by alcohol across the UK, and on an annual basis, there are around 300 to 350,000 hospital admissions related to drinking. Many Alcoholics Anonymous groups across the UK meet in church buildings, and this particular church, St Martin in Roath in Cardiff, is home to a group of around 15 who meet there every Friday. So for each of these people, it's really valuable support that makes a huge difference to their livelihoods that's being delivered in a church building. And that's the £8.4 billion figure that we came up with. All of this is to say that we're well aware and we're really making the case for how valuable churches are in the social good that they deliver. But we wanted to take this research a step further and really put it in the hands of the people who are delivering this support. And that's how we came to develop the House of Good Local. So this is a calculator tool that we introduced around a year ago. It's obviously the focus of our training session today, but I'm just going to continue giving you a bit of the background before going on to a bit more of the practical detail about how to use it and what you might do once you've done that. So the House of Good Local uses the calculations that we initially came up with as part of the House of Good research and the House of Good Health. It uses those different metrics for converting the figures for things like attendees of different services into financial values. And it's all based on the government's Treasury Green Book wellbeing methodology. So it's really rigorously calculated. Again, it's supported, the development was supported by State of Life, who are a firm of economists that did the original research. And we're very grateful to the Benefact Trust, who partly funded the development of the tool and enabled it to come into being. So that there's a range of ways that you can use it. You might choose to use it multiple times, and you might choose to kind of dip in and out of it as you please. But it's a tool that's really been developed with you in mind to help your church in a range of ways. It could be used to demonstrate your value, social value, to local councils, to the voluntary sectors, to the volunteers that helps run these services, to funders who might be able to support projects at your church, and also to just give a positive message to the congregation as well. So it's free to use, and we'd really encourage any of you to use it. There's no difficult criteria or cost incurred as part of doing that. So after this session, please do take a look at it. So the way to kind of start off with the tool, you access a page through our website. It's fully online, so you can just access it through a regular web browser. There's no need to download an app. And there's not even a requirement to create a set of login details. Once you've filled out the first page, the link to your calculation will be emailed to you, and you'll be able to access it there without having to create a password or set up any kind of additional things. So the first page looks like this. It will ask you for your church name and your email address. You can see an example here, which just has Karl's email address in it. And a range of information, and for a range of information about your church. This is just to capture for us who's using the tool, so we can help to make sure that we're reaching all of the different denominations and parts of the country that we'd like to. So it'll ask you about your denomination, diocese, listing status, whether you're in a rural or urban area, and whether you've had support from the National Churches Trust before. You'll also have, at this point, the opportunity to upload a logo of your church, and this is just so that it will look nice on your completed calculation if you want to have that as part of the kind of PDF that you'll be able to download at the end. So once you've filled in that first sort of biographical section, using the tool really boils down to just answering 9 questions about the things that happen in your church. So the first of these is the number of attendees at the main service in a typical week, followed by the average annual church expenditure. After these, the remaining 7 questions all relate to numbers of attendees in various capacities that come to your church at least once a month. So that includes volunteers, people who participate in a choir or a music group, people who attend a community group, the number of people who attend drug or alcohol support sessions, people who use the food bank or any other kind of food support services, the number of people who attend mental health support sessions, and the number of people who attend a youth group regularly. So using all of these, or as many of these as you're able to complete, the calculator will generate some figures, some monetary figures, and put them all together as part of the calculation. It's worth noting as well that none of these are compulsory. We have set them up so that if you are doing all of these things, you can capture them, but there's certainly no problem with not having all of them. The vast majority of churches don't have all 9 of these taking place under their roofs. It's just to enable you to capture all of them because they've got different figures as part of the calculation. So this is what it will look like when you're actually doing the tool. As I've said before, once you've logged in once, you'll be able to access the calculation through your email address and come back to it as many times as you like. Although we'd like to think these are quite easy figures to use, but we recognize that they're not necessarily going to be things that you have at the front of your mind all the time. So it's very likely a case that you can log in, take a look at what you need to get, then go away, speak to somebody else at your church, maybe it's the treasurer or the vicar, and get these figures that you need, and then come back to the tool. No need to log in, and you can just put them into the calculator here. So if you're able to see this, and I hope it's kind of zoomed in enough that you can, so this calculation includes 5 people supported through using the food bank regularly. And on the right-hand side, you can see how the calculation works. So it converts this figure by multiplying it, and that produces the monetary value of £16,500, more or less, and that will go into the overall calculation for your church. You'll be able to see there as well, there's an additional box where you can add further information about your activity. So this might just be a space where you can add detail about the food bank that you run. Maybe it's just a note for yourself, really, or for anyone who might be reading your calculation at the end, just to perhaps add a bit more color to it and a bit more detail. It's perhaps not as relevant for this question, but for some others, it might be multiple community groups and you've had to combine the figures for them into that calculation. Additionally, there's also the opportunity at this point to upload any additional evidence. So that might be a nice picture of an activity happening in your church, or a file to the same end. So it's hopefully really simple to use, hopefully not anything that's going to cause any problems. So it's really simple and straightforward, and it's been really designed with the user experience in mind. And here's just another example. So this is the total number of young people who attend a youth group. So in this case, there's 10 people attending, and in that case, you might split it down to 5 people at a youth club and another 5 people at a separate scout group that meets inside the church. So once you've done all of that, I think this screen might be a little bit small to see, but this just shows all of those different calculations put together at the end. So you can see them listed there, and there's a different figure for each one, and this will all be summed up to create the overall social value. So in this case, that's showing £500,000. Once you've done this, you'll also then have the opportunity to download your calculation, both as a PDF, which displays a table showing all of the figures for each activity, as well as the further information that you added as you went through with your logo at the top. And you'll also be able to download a CSV file. So that's an Excel document where you'll again be able to see those figures and the calculations. And then that might be something that you can then use if you're wanting to demonstrate your value in other ways, or the kind of if you're wanting to input those figures into a calculation you're doing about the effect of a piece of grant funding, for example. And that just shows there what the PDF looks like. So it's a simple table that kind of outlines all of those things that you're looking at, and you also get a nice pie chart to show the breakdown and which of those activities is kind of contributing the most to the social good that you're doing. Again, this is a completely free tool, so I'd really encourage you to use it if you can. And once you've got to this stage, you've got something really concrete, something really rigorously calculated that you can then take forward to show the value of your church. So it's, again, something that you could take to a funder. You could submit it if you're applying for a National Churches Trust grant and show the things that you're doing and the impact they're having. Or it's something that you could, pin up to the notice board in your church and show those volunteers the real difference that they're making as calculated by this. Once again, I'd like to thank the Benefact Trust for enabling us to create this tool. We've had hundreds of churches use it to date. We've had some churches complete it multiple times. The benefit of doing that is that you can demonstrate the difference that, again, a grant can make. So perhaps you've had a grant to install some toilets at your church, and that's enabled you to sort of host more diverse community groups. And the impact of that could be, tens of thousands of pounds. And this is a really good opportunity to prove that difference. So yes, if you're not sure, then I'd really encourage you to take part, because it makes a difference for funding, and we really want to see as much take up of this tool as possible. You might be wondering kind of why that is, what's in it for us. Obviously, the big thing is that we want to support your church, and we want to support churches all across the UK and speak up for them in what we're doing. And by having these local figures, we'll be able to see how spread out this support is. Obviously, your individual results are completely anonymized, but we're able to make the case to government that this is really support that's hitting every corner of the UK. It's not a figure that's kind of concentrated in London. It's not a figure that's concentrated in big cities. It's really the result of tens of thousands of churches right across the country coming together in small pockets in villages and towns and hamlets right across the country, and all making a big difference, a big contribution. We'd also like to stress that we know that it's not a kind of complete and exhaustive tool. We're well aware of all of the additional benefits that churches have to communities. They're big places for tourism and for heritage. There's a lot of intangible benefits that they bring to people as beautiful places and as local landmarks. And we're really keen to also highlight that. However, at this time, we're not able to capture that in a calculation of this nature. So that's why, if you're wondering why that's not part of this, that's the reason. There's no kind of specific agenda behind that. It's just a case of doing what we can for the time being. So I really hope that this is something that appeals to you, and is something that will have be able to make a difference in both the short and the long term for your church. So you can help us with our mission by using the calculator. To access it, you can just head over to www.nationalchurchestrust.org/houseofgood-local. We'll also email you all of the links, as Karl said, to the slides and to the calculator itself after the session. So you'll be able to access it there. And then once you've done that, we'd be really grateful if you could, use that information and spread the word. You could also join the National Churches Trust as a friend or write to your MP. As part of our recent campaigning work, we've really encouraged churches to write to their MPs, and this is a great piece of evidence that you can use to do that. They're really sort of, as I've said, rigorous figures that really prove the case for churches at a local level. And if your MP can see the difference that you're making, they're much more likely to take on the issue of supporting your church through wider government support. If you have any questions at all at any point, whether you're wondering about using the tool, if you're halfway through it and have a specific query about what to count as something, or if you're just wondering what other things you might be able to do with the results, please do get in touch with us at houseofgood@nationalchurchestrust.org by email, or you can always phone as well. We've got a phone number on our website. But yeah, thank you very much for coming along today, and I'm very happy to take any questions you might have in the immediate term now as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ollie, and I'd like to thank all of you as well for joining today too. Just to follow up on a couple of points that Ollie's mentioned. Just the first thing is we have some questions in the meeting chat, and I should be going through those and asking Ollie those in a second. But there is still time for people to add some more questions, so please have a think about that. The second thing Ollie's mentioned there about the email address, the houseofgood@nationalchurchtrust.org. That is an email address that Oliver himself monitors, and he's been working on the House of Good local itself, helping to build it and construct it, helping to test it, helping to train people and work through it. So what you're coming through then to an expert, and you're hearing someone that's dealt with queries and questions from churches of all denominations, from all parts of the country. So it's a reliable source of help and support. It's not something that's just going to disappear into the ether. I put the link to the House of Good local itself in the chat too, and it's also worth noting that on the website we've got a PDF, an 11-page PDF, which goes through and works through kind of a practical examples of going through things and some of the kind of nuances that are around things as well. So you have that to fall back on too. So I'll just ask Ollie some of the questions that have come in. Are you okay with that, Mr. Lack?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, the first question is from Brian James, who asks, are the number of attendees exclusive? Many participants are members of multiple groups. So I guess that's, for instance, if someone who attends a choir and also a mental health support session, can they be counted in both categories?
So the answer to that is definitely yes. If people are attending multiple things, then they can be counted across all of them. They can't be counted twice within the same category. So, for instance, the questions obviously speak about someone attending at least once a month. That doesn't mean that if they attend 4 times a month, you can count them 4 times within that same category. But if, as you say, someone's attending, the choir and also a mental health support session, they can be counted under both of those. Yep, and the services as well. All of those separately.
The next question, we hope that answers your question there, Brian. And if it doesn't, please let us know in the chat, and we'll come back and try and elaborate some more. The same also for Sarah Sylvester, who asks, does the youth category include children's groups, or what age would it cover? Would it be right there in drawing out some of the distinction between what can go into the community groups bit and what would go in the youth groups there, Ollie?
Yeah, sure. So that the way that the calculator is set up is based on research from a range of sources. What they've never been able to work out across the whole of the kind of research community is the social value to children under the age of 13, the sort of well-being benefit that they derive from taking part in a group like this. So the answer for that youth group is anyone aged between 13 and 18. Yeah, for that reason, we just don't know how much social value anyone younger than that would actually get from taking part in this, so that the evidence wouldn't be kind of reliable. If somebody under 18 is attending other parts of this, that other categories across this, they're not counted because of, again, the way that the research has been set up. Those are exclusively for kind of adults.
Okay. We have a question here from Kath Jump, who starts off excitingly for us. This tool is brilliant. Thank you very much, Kath. It's very kind of you. And then she asks, can it be used for cathedrals too? Yes,
absolutely. We'd really encourage cathedrals to use it. Obviously, the scale of figures might be very different for cathedrals and different types of churches, but there's nothing to stop you using it. All of this data is based on really wide-scale research that's taken place that calculates the value of to individuals of taking part in any of these activities, so that could, in theory, be under any type of building roof. But yeah, so churches, cathedrals, chapels, meeting houses are all the buildings that we support, and we would encourage to use the tool. And there's really no distinction between those in terms of how to use it or what counts.
Okay, we have a question here from Mike Thornton. So the topics don't suit our church and its mission. We run toddler groups supporting young families, and we run afternoon teas for the over 50s. Is there any chance to extend the range of activities? So I guess there's two questions there. One potentially is around the use of community groups to record some activities, and then one might be around how we're looking at developing the tool.
Yeah, so the first thing is to say that I think both of those groups could be counted as community groups in this instance, with the very important sort of qualification that with the toddler groups, it would be the parents of those toddlers that would be counted as attendees of the group. If they're present, then so that community group kind of field is very much intended to capture some of those maybe miscellaneous groups, because we know that there are so many different types of things that happen in churches. A lot of things like lunch clubs and knitting groups and reading groups and those sorts of things that are just kind of too specific, perhaps, to have their own fields, but ones that we can capture with that community groups one. That said, we're also very keen to expand the House of Good Local to capture more different fields. Obviously, that's partly reliant on the research that takes place, and it's also reliant on our kind of ability to fund the development of the tool. So we're looking at doing just that at the moment, but I can't say exactly what's going to happen in the near future with that for the time being.
Okay, well, I'll go on to a question there from Tamsin Merchant. Hi, she says, I'm wondering why worship attendance is Sundays and not average weekly attendance, which includes expression of church that aren't on Sundays.
So the way that we've set up the tool is to capture people attending the services once a week, and that's why it's based on the main service at the weekend. I think if you can be confident that the numbers of people attending on another service are entirely exclusive to that day and don't also go to the Sunday service, then in theory you could capture them. We just developed it in this way, having undertaken a trial and testing with some live cases of churches, and found that this was the best way to make sure that there was no double counting going on. So it is kind of intended to capture everyone that's attending, but just in a way that's easy for churches to use and to fill out without worrying about double counting people.
Yeah, that's very true. But that's I'm very glad you raised that, actually, Tamsin, and hopefully you can see the kind of what we've tried to do is make the tool as accessible as possible. And that's what we've been trying to do under this instance. But hopefully that answers your question and means you can count in the way that Ollie's set out. Andrew Lightfoot comes in with a question. He says, is there facility to include occasional events in the assessment, please? Probably not at this point. Is that fair?
Yeah, so again, it's all based on how the research is set out and how it exists. So the reason that's why everything includes things that happen at least once a month, because it's all based on research that captures data over the course of a whole year. And so, yeah, at the moment we don't have really scope to do that based on how we've developed everything to date, I'm afraid.
Teresa Morrison has a similar question to what I answered on Tamsin, which is we have 4 services a week, which some people attend more than one of them. Do they counted twice if they come to 2 or 3 different services?
Yeah, so again, it's the number of the number of unique attendees across that time. So there shouldn't be any double counting of people even if they're attending multiple times a week. And again, that's because the calculation is based on the kind of well-being benefit that somebody has from attending at least once a week, rather than the well-being they have from attending each individual service.
Okay, we've got a question here from Helen Bray with a couple of thumbs up next to it as well, which is, it says, in a rural area like ours, there are several parishes/churches linked together in a combined benefit. How should we approach the group, as a whole or as separate churches, to demonstrate the combined impact?
That's a really good question, and to be honest, it's really up to you. We've created this tool, with ease of use in mind, so we're quite keen that people use it in a way that suits them. In terms of how the calculations work, there shouldn't be any trouble with combining those things together, assuming that there isn't double counting going on. We know that in a lot of places, particularly rural places, there might be churches that have services once a month and they kind of rotate around different parishes. So if it's easier to combine it, then that's not a problem at all, because the way that you use the results is entirely up to you. You could do it all together and then show that that's for the whole group of churches, or you could do it on an individual basis, or you could do both and show that difference as well, or use them for different purposes. It's really in your hands, to be honest, with that one. The only thing I would mention is that it would be helpful from our end, because we're keen to know how people are using the tool. If you could, note that somewhere when you fill it out, or even just drop us an email to let us know, because that will help us to develop it in the future and work out and help us with presentations like this to know, how people are finding it useful and making it work in different ways.
Yes, and that's a very important point, as Ollie mentioned at the end about keeping us informed as you're going through. Part of the reason for that is, as Ollie mentioned, we are looking to develop the tool, and so there's the potential maybe this year for some new things to come in, which we'll be looking to trial out. So if that's something that also you're interested in taking part in and trying to help us develop the tool and to have a practice to see what it's like to fill in, and is this kind of question, do you have the information available, and all that kind of stuff that we're working through, then that's also something to get in touch with Ollie about as well. So this is something that we're very much invested in and want to help as many churches as possible. Some very nice words there from Kath about how this will be helpful for her in a fundraising perspective as well. Then we've got average weekly attendance. Yes. So if you've already got that data, then that's very good. There's a question here from Cressida Pryor, who says, I'm wondering if you'd count all attendees at a hybrid church service where some are present in the church and others are at home online. So would you have to be in the building to receive the well-being the well-being score that's there?
That is a very good question, and I would have to double check, to be honest. If you're able to follow up, if you're able to drop us an email at the houseofgood@nationalchurchestrust.org, then I'll follow up and double check and get back to you on that, because to be honest, I'm really not exactly sure what we would count there, unless you know, Karl.
No, I wouldn't. I would probably think not at this point, but I would. But we will definitely check and get back to you, Cressida. And congratulations, Cressida, for being the first person to ask us that question after several training sessions that we've done over the years. So we're very grateful for you to asking that question. This is a very helpful thing for us all as we go through it. So thank you very much, Cressida. So Doug, Doug Zimmerman, and Doug Zimmerman was the first person to introduce himself. So thank you again, Doug, for breaking the ice in that way. Who says we've had a 40-year-long lunchtime classical music concert every Thursday. Average attendance is 75 people. How could I fit this into the tool at all? So would that be under the choir or music group section there, Ollie?
Yes, I think so. I guess if you're wanting to capture that kind of 40 years worth of impact as well, you could do that just by taking that number that comes out from that calculation and multiplying it by 40, and that's maybe a creative use you could have for if you're applying for funding or something to show that the longevity of the impact that you're having and the benefit that it's bringing to local people.
And I think that's again that's a useful point, because as Ollie said, we can't count everything, but what we've tried to do is, just because we can't count everything doesn't mean we shouldn't count anything at all. And what we're hoping to do is this will enable churches to better tell their own individual story. So that's a classic example there, Doug. We've had a question from Susan Thayer, who asks, would attendance include outdoor gatherings linked to worship?
Yes, I think so. If it's kind of just outside of your church, because it's the same, it's the benefit that people get in their individual lives from taking part in that. Kind of collectively, I think that would count as well.
Okay. Now that was the last question that we've been asked. I'll talk for a little bit more, just in case there are more questions to come through. So I'll remind you that the recording of this we made available. It'll be a wonderful person called Sarah Crossland who'll be going through and editing the recording and putting it back out there so that you can all access it, and you'll also therefore be able to see all of the slides which will come round with that as well. Again, just to re-emphasize, this is a free resource that's on the website. The link to that is in the chat, but it's all on the National Churches Trust website. Just searching for House of Good Local should come up with that tool. We also have on the website the publications of House of Good and House of Good Health, if you'd like to get some more background on it. So all of those things are available, and they're all used. All those tools and all those publications, they're used by MPs to help lobby the government on all of our behalves to show how helpful churches are, and they're also helpful when you're in a competitive funding process as well. We've had one question here, which is from Mike Thornton. How do I go back and enter the IMD data in the introduction?
Is this once you've proceeded past the introduction?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I can try and send you the link to that if you drop me an email. The very introductory bit is actually difficult to access once you've begun with the other bits, but not impossible. It just requires a bit of sort of fiddling around with it at our end. So if you get in touch with us by email, then I'll be able to send you the link to that.
Okay, and we've had a question there from Louise Sanderson, who asks, can you use the tool for modelling? So, for example, if we're thinking of doing a food bank, could we create the social value, or would that end up being recorded by National Churches Trust as actual data and skewed figures?
Yeah, that's absolutely something you can do, and something that I would encourage you to do if you're thinking about opening a food bank. I would. It's not necessarily a problem for us, but it could be more helpful for us if you do include a note, perhaps just in that in the further information section under that food bank calculation, just to mention that it's kind of modelling. We, as I've said, all of the data we kind of treat anonymously. We don't share it with anyone else, but we do look at it just for our own purposes to help with developing the tool and informing our other pieces of work. So it's helpful to know that sort of information if that's something you're doing.
It's a follow-up question from Miranda Lawrence only says the IMD data link would be useful for everyone. So on the guidance note that's on the website, there are links there. You can just click on and look up your IMD data. So all that is available. I think what the previous question was asking is how we could go back into something that you already entered. So that's it was two separate questions there. But if you want to look up the help looking up the IMD data, that's all there on the guidance under section 3, which is on page 4, helpfully. Okay, and we've had a comment here from Andrew Lightfoot, who says it seems an excellent tool. Thank you very much. I'll be trying to help inform our mission action plan as well as potential funding bids. That's terrific. We've got a question from Paul. Is there an age limit to the people we're recording as attending the choir? We have 3 with a wide variety of ages from primary school to retired.
Yeah, so for the choirs and music groups question, it should be counted just as people over the age of 18. But if you do have sort of attendees who are between the ages of 13 and 18, you could capture them as under the youth group question, particularly if it's kind of a youth choir or something like that.
We have also a question from Jane Tarry, which has had a heart and a thumbs up, which is, along with the recording, could we send around a dummy report? It'd be really useful to have an end product to show the parishes. I guess, you know, if we can fill in something and then send off the example PDF with that, I think that's what they're asking for. Is that something that's possible, Wally?
Yeah, definitely. We can set up an example one just with some kind of made up data for sure, and send that around with the notes. Definitely. Yep.
There we are. What you can see there is live note taking there from Mr. Oliver Lack, who's writing down the action point that he needs to take. That's the last question that we have at this point. So just to check, just to see if there's any others. Thank you very much, Sue. It's a team effort, but Oliver Lack is leading the way for us all on this. Thanks again as well to State of Life, who have been the brains behind the outfit in putting this tool together for us, and also to Benefact Trust, whose philanthropic support has helped make this tool freely available to all of you and all churches across the country. It's had quite a good take up, hasn't it, Ollie?
Yeah, we've had I think about 350 or 400 churches complete the tool so far, and even more than that kind of start it and seemingly on their way to completing it. So,
and lots of different denominations too.
Yeah, we've had more than 16 denominations, churches from more than 16 different denominations, and in every part of the UK, from all sorts of types of areas as well. So we're really grateful for those who've helped spread the message and completed it, and really hope it's making a difference too.
Great. Okay. So thank you very much for everybody for all of your time. I'd also like to thank Oliver Lack for his presentation and for responding to each and every one of your questions. Thank you very much, and please have a very good day and an enjoyable Easter. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone.